It is time for Ask the Mayor with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan, fresh off some deserved time off. I heard you had a pretty nice time last week.
We did, and I think Jay did a nice job filling in.
He did.
But sometimes we always plan a very special time with all of the kids and grandkids for 4 days down at the lake, and there was rain everywhere.
You were telling me about that before the program, where for a while there we couldn't buy a rain shower, and we think we're getting more now, but down there it's a different situation, isn't it?
Down in Missouri, they've had a lot of rains, and it just keeps hanging on that Missouri-Arkansas border, and Table Rock Lake was as high as I think I've ever seen it, and I think the bad part is all those guys that are doing the big bass fishing. Heck, all the bait's been washed into the water, and they're having a terrible time catching any fish.
Yeah, well, they're supposed to be professionals, those guys, so they should know how to get these fish or whatever. But yeah, I was wondering any way they can pipe some of that water this way. That would be nice. That would be nice for drought purposes.
I mean, I know that there's just a number of lakes that below that lake that they're trying to protect. It really, to me, it's amazing how the Corps of Engineers work and how they manage water, and because water's pretty powerful.
Yeah. One lake feeds another, and then eventually everybody benefits from it in various sectors of the economy. Well, summer work going on here in Beatrice, the Lincoln Street project is. That street's been blocked off. That's underway.
Yep.
I looked a couple days ago at the former Lincoln School site. I don't think anything had been done there yet.
No, but they should. I mean, we're scheduled to start that in June, and I'm kind of excited to see how that development lays out. Like you and I just talked, it shouldn't take a lot of time because at least we're dealing with a pretty flat area of ground, and putting in the roads so people can get a good idea what that housing development will look like.
Be nice to see, because just as a field now, you can't really tell where homes will be laid out, but it'll be nice to see, as you mentioned, the pattern, what it will look like eventually. Yeah. So, and then I suppose after that one, they go straight to the Paddock Lane one, or is that a little bit later on?
In this case, they go straight to it because it's the same company.
I see.
Since we're using the same company, they'll get one done and then move right on to the next one, and then on to their next project in another community.
Yeah. Lincoln Street, east of where the Heritage Heights thing will be there, that block being replaced there.
Yes.
I think there was a contract payment on the Board of Public Works meeting yesterday. I wasn't able to make the meeting, but so I imagine things are going along there.
Yes, other than, and rain does slow us down a little, but yes, they're trying to get, first of all, they're on the schedule. When we visited with them during the whole bid process, and then after, they'll be done with that stretch hopefully around August 1st, but definitely before school. That was one of the more important things that we wanted to make sure that our contractor knew what our parameters were.
Yeah. And if I remember right, once they get that done, there's no more asphalt left between Lincoln and 19th and 33rd and 19th, or is there another asphalt stretch in there? I can't.
I don't think there is, but
I think it's all concrete.
I think it's all concrete. Yeah. Okay. So that from 19th Street out to the school, we should be in really good shape.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's always a little inconvenience for the residents in that area, but you got a brand new street when it's all set and done.
Yes, that's the downside. Yeah. Yep.
I understand some lift station rehabilitation's been going on too. I think lift station number six, I believe.
Number 6.
I can't remember where that one's at.
I think that's Storecraft.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I think it's in that area.
Pretty much wrapped up or close to it? Or,
I wasn't able to attend the Board of Public Works meeting, so I'm not 100% sure, but we should be getting pretty close. That's an important lift station. I think it not only handles all that area, but I think it also handles some of the industrial park.
Yeah.
Those things are like everything else. It's amazing it's amazing all the things that we have to do that nobody really sees. Yeah. It's easy to see, like, well, with Heritage Heights, when we put in the roads there, it'll be easy to see that from an infrastructure position. But what lies underneath the streets and the lift stations and, the WPC, those are the things that we just don't see as regular citizens. But as we've said before, when they don't work, we know.
even though they're out of sight, they're just as important. And if you flush the toilet, nothing happens, then you're going to be mad.
You're not going to be a happy camper.
That's for sure. One thing I get to see, because I get up pretty early in the morning to come to work, is street department crews out doing a lot of paint striping, restriping of downtown areas. I know they've been doing, parking stalls and turn lanes and things. And that's interesting to see, because I imagine it's easier to do it at that time of the day. There's not as much traffic.
Sure. You have to work around the traffic, and it's I would say most of the street striping and parking stalls and turn lanes, if you kind of notice a pattern, you see most of all that work getting done right before Homestead Days. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like putting your best foot forward, because we know that shortly we'll have a lot of people here.
Yeah. Homestead Days coming up. What's that mean to the community, as you've seen it over the years, in terms of its economic impact and just sort of one of those quality of life issues for the city?
Well, it attracts a lot of people to come to our community. Mm-hmm. On Saturday for the parade, you're going to see a lot of people. I think they've had some interesting, I think, was it last year or the year before? On Sunday they brought in those guys that ride their BMX bikes. Mm-hmm. That was really a neat show. Homestead always does a nice job with adding entertainment. But if you think about it from an economic standpoint, from a retail standpoint, it gives us exposure from the restaurants and, the brewery and those type of things. It's certainly going to bring in traffic. You're going to have people that stay at the hotel, so that also adds to it as well. And I think it's just the overall camaraderie that you have when you have that many people come together. I know that, as you know, the parade lines up the streets, and it's a great opportunity for young and old.
Yeah, people pretty much start staking out their spot about hour and a half, 2 before that parade, yep. So you can get the best spot. A little bit of a sad note this year that Angie Bruna, President, Executive Director of the Chamber, is going to be, this will be her last Homestead Day. She's taken a new position in another community, and want to congratulate her for all her work over the years, because a lot of planning goes on, a lot of, you got to get volunteers together, got to make sure all the acts and the things are in sequence the way you want them. And,
right, and my understanding is, I'm happy for Angie. I'm happy for, anytime you get a great opportunity and take it. For us, it'll be a loss. But again, you're right. Chamber has, under her direction, has done a great job with Homestead Days for a number of years. Mm-hmm. I also know that, I think the Homestead Days Committee will probably start up looking at 2026 in July. So, there'll be some heavy lifting that'll have to be done by other people, because that's just a huge time commitment prior to, and I would imagine very little sleep during the 3 or 4 days that it actually takes place.
Yeah. Well, the city's helping out with the duck race again. It gets to go down the canal near the water park. I remember when that used to be a Big Blue River thing, but you never could count on the river to cooperate very much. So it's kind of a nicer way to do that,
Right.
Go forward. So, but and it's a fundraiser too. So
it is. It is. It's well, and it's a tradition that I don't even know when it started, mm-hmm. or how many years ago it started, but mm-hmm. it's a tradition that continues to kind of, I think, grow. I think last year there was certainly a lot of people here. Mm-hmm. I think probably the only thing that has brought in more people in at one time was the eclipse.
Yeah. And that was one of those one-time original things that you're not going to see for a long time. So, yeah. Mayor Bob Morgan with us on Ask the Mayor today on KWBE. We'll come back with more in a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. You are in budget time, continuing to be in that. What's the update on what's going on there?
Capital is done. At least the requests are in to Hannah to start taking a look how that looks for our biennium budget, because mm-hmm. it'll be for October of 2025 through September of 2027. I believe the next step will be for the city administrator and our financial director to meet with all the department heads. I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks you'll see that happen. Mm-hmm. And then we start putting the budget together. And once the budget's together, I think one of the things that That's either a blessing or a curse. I will sit down with them and take a look at the preliminary budget with Tobias and Hannah, because there's always going to be some questions. You always have to prioritize, and I guess one of the things that I've been very fortunate with is had to put college budgets together for 30 years, so I certainly understand the process that they're going through. But there's always going to be some as I look at a budget, you kind of shoot for a figure of where you want to be, whether it's a 1% or a 2% increase. And then you start to make some choices. You want to do this or do you want to do that? And, that keeps you hopefully within the bounds of what your budget is to move forward. Some of the things are already fixed. We have contracts with all of our unions of employees, so we know what those costs are. So those are driven. And, overall, what I've seen through the years, from the operating budget, you're going to see some increases just because prices go up, but you've got a pretty good idea of supplies and those type of things that you use on a daily basis. So I think it'll be a very good, prudent budget for the next 2 years.
In that next 2-year period, are there very many major equipment additions that you just have to make, whether it be a replacement of something? I think you have a fire truck coming and maybe some other things, but at some point.
Well, yes. We thought we were going to have a fire truck, I think, in August of this year. I think we're hoping for it in August of 2026. Oh, wow. There's not a lot of manufacturers that make fire trucks, and they somewhat have a limited, either by just people needing them or by their own design. We've been in line for a long time.
That's $1 million purchase too, isn't it?
It started out at 803, but as we get it put off, I know there's price increases, so it'll be $1 million purchase. Yeah. But it's $1 million purchase we really absolutely have to have. I think our pumper truck is close to 30 years old, if not a little bit older, and it's been gone through a number of times, and it's in good shape, but at some point in time you replace it because you don't want that pumper truck to fail.
I think the only thing that compares with it remotely is jet vac trucks or whatever. We've replaced a couple of those too.
We have. And technology changes. So when you replace, if you replace your car that's 10 years old to one that's today, you're going to see a lot of differences and a lot of changes. So, but we continue to look at that, and I think you'll hopefully see that in August of 26.
Yeah. I'm assuming there's what kind of routine replacement of maybe some police patrol units, maybe some pickups or something that departments use. Or
correct. There'll be a number of equipment replacements. I think for a lot of, if you've noticed, I think we've done a really good, prudent job of not replacing anything that doesn't need replaced. I remember it was either the first or second year that I was on the city council, and there was a few replacement trucks on there, and the other trucks had been quite old, and I asked the question, well, what do we do with the old ones? And they said, well, we'll try to trade them in, but they're really not going to be worth a whole lot because we run them until
scrap them.
we run them until we really can't use them anymore, and that's there's two theories of thought for that, but at the end of the day, I think we've done really well on getting the most out of our equipment.
And I think sometimes not only cities but counties can put those things up for public auction too on a bid basis.
Correct.
If somebody can get some use out of it, that's possibilities.
Absolutely. So the budget process is coming along fine. Yeah. It's one of those things too that we have to kind of wait and see where we're at from the revenue side. I think, I don't know when total valuations, but it's usually in August that we'll find out what total valuations are, and that helps determine also where we're at from a budgetary standpoint. Yeah.
You mentioned the labor agreements, that's all settled. Haven't you moved to longer term contracts generally and that must help a little bit with planning in the budget.
It does. I think, we've gone long term except with the Fraternal Order of the Police. I think they're coming up. I think one of the other things that we always try to do too is just see what's happening in the day to day. And always look to see where we stand from a comparability. Yeah. We want to be fair.
trying to think. I had one other budget question, and now it's kind of escaped my mind here. It must be an age thing setting in here. But,
well, I can tell you this: I relate.
Yeah. Well, one thing you did mention, you talk about valuation. There's a big, of course, it's valuation time.
It is.
Everybody, which is bad timing for, you look at a budget and you see people are upset about their valuations.
Correct.
Of course, there are two different parts of that. There's the valuation, and then there's the tax setting policy of the local government body.
Yes.
So even with a higher valuation doesn't necessarily mean your taxes are going up.
Correct.
It's more about controlling how much you're asking for or what you levy for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So your levy, will it change any at all? Do you think it will stay about the same, go down a little, or?
It's too early to tell. Mm-hmm. We have just seen, since COVID, we have just seen an increase almost exponentially in almost everything. Mm-hmm. And that's also one of the things that we saw with, valuations. Yeah. Goodness gracious, the housing market just exploded over those last 5 years. Mm-hmm. You look at I looked at my statement, when I got home, and I'm going, oh my gosh, it went up 9.5%. Yeah. But yet I looked around at some of the homes that sold in my neighborhood, and I'm like, oh, well,
you can see why.
I at least see some rationale why. Yeah. So, but it's a sticker shock to everybody, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but actually the city doesn't set valuation, so it's one of the things that's out of our domain.
And counties will say, well, we really don't either. It's the market sets them and state law sets them because this is the system we're stuck with.
That is
valuing property.
There is very, very much truth in what you say there. Absolutely.
And I think people are trying to get at maybe a different way to value property, but that's yet to be done.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Until that is done, you're kind of stuck with that method for a while. So. Well, one thing that's coming up, I think for the first time this season, is the city street department conducts mosquito spraying every once in a while during the summer. And I know you have one scheduled coming up on June 16th and 17th, which would be right before Homestead Days.
That is correct. So, we'll see what we can do and very effectively spray for the mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. I don't understand the whole thing. I probably should have Jason sit down and explain the whole thing to me. But I know that we set traps. Yeah. And I know there's a benchmark of how many mosquitoes we must catch in those traps. Mm-hmm. That really triggers when we should spray. So there's a lot of education in that. And even that, I think the equipment has changed. So now how much we put on is pretty well calibrated and computerized. And so, technology will help us relieve one of those pesky summer pets that like to attack us.
You hear that little whirring sound at night? Yep. That's a flatbed truck of the street department with a mounted sprayer on it coming around your neighborhood.
Coming to your neighborhood soon.
Yeah. Usually that's done between, I think, 8 at night and through the morning, so there's less activity out there. So.
Right. Less activity, and hopefully at that point in time, less wind. Yeah. That'll help us disperse. Yeah. Yep.
And if I recall correctly, too, I think Jason's crew, if needed on a contract basis, does a little bit of that for some villages around the county too, if they need it for like a certain time or the problem gets so bad. So
there's a lot of things that we do on mutual aid to a lot of the smaller communities that people again don't know or notice, but we try to be good neighbors to everybody that we can because as a town of, a first-class city of 12,500, certainly we have some equipment that a town of 800 doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And so, when called upon, we're willing to help out.
Okay. Back to wrap up Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. 7 minutes left on our program today with Mayor Bob Morgan on Ask the Mayor. A couple of things to touch on. Gage County Board on Wednesday approved the agreement with the City of Beatrice for 911 dispatching service and other related services for a 5-year period. So that's been a nice arrangement where, you can kind of regionalize. I know you've had some setbacks in the regional aspect of it with Crete and Richardson County, but that's the goal anyway.
Correct, and I think that the contract was a good contract for both the city and the county. Mm-hmm. Having it for 5 years means that we've got some longevity. Mm-hmm. Longevity not only helps the city and the county, it also helps the dispatchers know that they're going to be in a good position for another 5 years. Certainly, with those 2 losses, we'd like to maybe pick up a couple of other counties. Some of the smaller counties might be ready to be picked up. We don't know. One of the things that I've discussed with Tobias and our IT folks is there also a way that we can do this at different service level agreement methods? In other words, right now, they get, not only 911 calls, they get the tracking calls, and they get the records, which is all important. Mm-hmm. But you may end up with a county, maybe Pawnee County or someplace like that doesn't necessarily need all the bits and pieces. So is there a way you can break that out and have a bare bones, a medium, and then what we have right here, what I would call the top of the line? Mm-hmm. And so you've got three different arrangements that you could maybe bring in some more business. So we're going to try to do that over the next 2 or 3 years. It's not a simple task. Yeah. But right now, I think the 911 agreement is in a good place. I thank the county for sticking with us. I think that the more things that we can do from a city and a county perspective, I think it is a very positive that we need to continue to strive for.
I don't know if it's even known, but sometimes you look at what other areas of the state are doing, and that regional concept of dispatching in other areas, is it working pretty well, or do they also see maybe setbacks once in a while where, you start out with a set number of customers you're serving, but that changes, over time?
I think there's a couple of things to play there. Mm-hmm. I think in each county, they're allowed one 911 center. Mm-hmm. That's set up. That's kind of the way it's set up. Mm-hmm. I think another thing you take a look at is, I know one of the things that kind of happened in Crete and in their county is there were some people wondering why they were getting their tax dollars sent to, Beatrice and Gage County. And so there's also a little bit of a political side to that as well. Mm-hmm. I know the same thing we ran into with Richardson County as well. So, there's the economic side and there is the political side. At some point in time, you're right, it could be regionalized. Yeah. I mean, with technology, probably well after my time and, on Earth, but you could have basically that center sitting in wherever. Mm-hmm. And with
serving maybe 7 or 8 counties,
or there could be a state 911 center. Who knows? Yeah. But right now, we're in a good spot. We've got, the other thing that people need to really realize is our 911 dispatchers are professionals. They've been at it a long time, and there's a real benefit to that because, when somebody calls in, not only do they typically know the address, but they typically kind of know how to get there by also, we say, well, turn right at Johnny's, but we know how to get to places that we need to get to. And I think every one of those dispatchers have been with us. They're well trained, and the dispatch center runs really, really well. So hats off to them as well.
And there's everything's addressed today, so it shows up. You mentioned that don't turn at left when you see the big tree on the hill. There are numbers and everything. There's everything assigned with addresses.
Absolutely. So that's changed because every farm has their own address. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Well, you're into the start of the Big Blue Water Park season, but it, as happens occasionally, it was kind of cool on the Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day is just a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
You're going to get some that's running nice and sunny, but, Memorial Day wasn't quite at that. Yeah. However, look at the next couple of days. Yeah. You're going to see a lot of opportunity and a lot more warm water.
I drove by, I think it was Tuesday afternoon, and this was at about, I want to say 5:30 or so, and that parking lot was pretty full.
Yeah.
It was nice and warm, and that when the weather changes, you still get a pretty good crowd turnout. And I don't know what the numbers are early. I take it was probably it's been a little lower because of the slow start, but now that we're getting into a string of 80s and 90s, it'll pick up.
It'll pick up. Really we'll be ready for those 100-degree days.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to do a Karnak the Magnificent and ask you divine the answer before ever having seen the question, but anything on the council meeting for Monday night? I always ask you that, but I know the agenda isn't determined until...
I know the agenda set is actually at 9:30 today, but I don't think it'll be real heavy. Yeah. You kind of, it ebbs and flows. Yeah. I think it's going to be probably maybe a little softer night than some others.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, one other thing is any other. You talked. I think there was some discussion the last time on Dempster. Just some brief discussion about how there is some work going on behind the scenes that the public really doesn't see with the haul off of things like that. Any other kind of update about what's going on?
The only thing I can say is it kind of ties into the financial picture of the city. We put out for bid removal of the asbestos on all the buildings except for the roofs because you can't get to the roofs.
Yeah.
Those bids came in, I think, to remove all the asbestos except for the roofs was right at about $158,000, which is a pretty good deal. So we went back and took a look at where our revenues were standing, and we're running a little bit ahead, I think, on sales tax, and I think there's one other area we're running a little bit ahead on. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, last Monday night we approved to accept the contract for $158,000. So so we're starting to remove all the asbestos, and that's a great first step.
Yeah. And I saw in court yesterday, I think there was one of the Dempster issues on there, might have been on the acquisition of property again. I'm not sure how that came out, but you're getting pretty close to getting all of those parcels.
Hopefully by the end of this year.
Okay. Mayor, thanks for being with us again.
All right. Thank you, Doug.